सत श्री अकाल दोस्तों, मैं भूपिंदर, तुसी देख रहे हो जस पंजाबी, and we welcome you all once again to this show, the show about law, because since we all here and we immigrants, if we want to call ourselves, because that's what we are, so we face lots of issues regarding immigration when we come to this country. But to deal with those issues, we always need lawyers, and not just any lawyer, not just any other person who can read stuff from internet and tell you what's going on, but the specialists. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, so now in this show we take you to the journey about the laws regarding immigration with the lawyers from Bretz Coven LLP. So let's welcome them here. Hey Kerry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, BK. Thank you for having us.
And Eileen, how are you today?
Very well, thank you. And you?
So from last show to this show, so there is no shutdown anymore. We should be very grateful about. But the thing is, during that shutdown, there was one thing that came up was, as soon as the budget will be passed, there will be a discussion on the comprehensive immigration law. So what is your take on that?
Well, it is certainly in the public eye. President Obama is speaking a lot about it. Various senators and Democrats are speaking about it. Good sign, a Republican, McCain, is speaking about it. So it's very possible that, as we know, the Senate already passed a bill. It's very possible the Congress will pass something. We don't know if it'll be better or worse or the same, and they'll have to make some adjustments, but it's certainly in play and it's coming up. In the meantime, Obama has continued to use his powers as the president and prosecutorial discretion to make some minor adjustments in immigration law. The most recent one, I think Eileen can tell you about, and I think it affects a lot of Indians who are in the who work in the science and technology areas.
Yes, the latest thing that's come out from immigration, or more succinctly, CIS, is that they've made an extension for those people who have graduated in the United States and got work authorization as a result of their degree. It's usually been a 12-month period of work authorization for this practical training time period, but now they've extended it to a full 27 months for somebody who's studied in the sciences, technology, and in mathematics. So anybody who's gone to school, and especially for an advanced degree, gotten a master's in science or mathematics or technology, they're eligible to stay here and work legally for 27 months. It gives them a lot of time and a lot of opportunity maybe to find full-time positions and be petitioned for to get a green card.
Well, that actually is very great. And since we all know that Indians, they usually push their kids towards technological area like IT, or maybe to medical field. As far as I know, my brother was forced into either you want to be a doctor or you want to be an engineer. So I hope it will be very beneficial to all those kids who are studying IT, or who are in the technology field or medical field, or sciences, as we were talking about.
And by the way, just to add to that, BK, the legislation that was passed by the Senate has also a tremendous amount of benefits in it for people in the same category. So, you know, we used to be more family-based immigration. The skills weren't so defined in terms of the sciences. What will probably happen if the comprehensive immigration reform gets passed, it will become much easier for somebody who has gone to school in the U.S., graduated with an advanced degree in the sciences or technology or medical field, to basically stay here. In fact, I think under the new legislation, if it gets passed, they will be able to self-petition. They won't need an employer. They won't have to have the employer or be beholden to an employer. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because it used to be we'd let you come here and study, and then we'd make it so hard for you to get a job, you'd go back home to somewhere else and work, and we'd lose the benefit of your training and skill that you had.
Exactly.
So I think this is smart immigration, and the Obama step is a nice small move while we wait for comprehensive reform.
Also, if we talk about Indian community, kids nowadays are much more influenced by the glamour industry as well. So Bollywood has affected a lot of kids here. So they come here for to get the skills in, let's say, drama or like something like that, to get into the acting field. What about those artists who want to be a singer or something like that? Do they have any special provision for them as well?
Well, right now, for people who are going to come here and perform, there are different visas. You have the P visa, the O visa, depending on what field of study you might be completing, and then what experience and skills you actually have. So if you have an extraordinary ability, you may come here and get an O visa. If you're going to be petitioned to be doing a performing arts, there's visas available for you as well. But it is more difficult to get visas in those categories for long periods of time. Because sometimes you'd be coming here, it's going to be for the duration of, let's say, you're doing a performance, and it might be
A couple of months, maybe.
that's it, and that's the end of the visa. So they haven't come around to giving such great lengths of time to work and to get the experience necessary to maybe find a permanent employer to petition for them. But there are different prospects for them too. They should come and discuss it with an attorney to find out what's available depending on what they're studying.
The interesting thing about musicians, and I was a musician in a former life, so I have a special place in my heart for musicians, particularly ethnic musicians. A lot of people play sitar, or they come over and they perform Indian music. It is not that difficult to get visas to come here, to play these gigs, to play these shows, and go home. And it really just takes a promoter to be able to say, this is where these folks are going to play, this is their history. You don't have to be that famous. And they can probably get a visa to come here with their band, perform some shows, and then go home and come back again next year. But if the person is extraordinary, and by extraordinary, let's say they're really well known in India, or maybe really well known in their town, and they, are particularly good at a certain instrument. Some of those people can actually petition for themselves, as Eileen was saying, as an extraordinary person. And it takes putting together the awards they've won, the history they have, the records they've done, the recordings. And we do a lot of that for various ethnic artists throughout the world.
Yeah, and also talking about that, I remember a long time back, there were these cases when people will come from India in a group, and then they will never go back. So what for them? Like, they're not here legally. So
Right.
what can they do to?
Well, when you come in a band or you come in a group, you're coming on a non-immigrant visa, and if you don't go back on time, you violate the terms of that visa, right? You
Exactly.
overstay. So it's not unusual for someone to come here on a plain tourist visa, B1, B2, get admitted for 6 months, and then forget to go back for a couple of years. So they're in the same position as somebody else who overstayed their visa, and there's various options for them. Some of those folks wind up being petitioned for through marriage. Some of those folks wind up being here for so long, they qualify for something called cancellation of removal, which requires that you've been here for 10 years, that you're a person of good moral character, and that either a parent, spouse, or a child who's a citizen or a resident of the U.S. would suffer an extreme hardship. So there's various ways for people who overstayed their non-immigrant visa, and there's all kinds of areas of non-immigrant visa. The artist and musician or the actor is just one. The tourist is just another, and so they still have options.
Great. So talking about those kids who are yet not 18, let's suppose, and they were pushed to come here illegally. So what can we do for them?
Well, in this situation where you have a minor in the United States, it is quite possible for them to be able to self-petition as well. The process is called Special Immigrant Juvenile Visa. The first step would be to go ahead and get them a guardian and have the guardian appointed through family court, and that family court petition would have to be specific to say that there's a special finding that this person's been abandoned, abused, or neglected by a parent. Just one parent, doesn't have to be both. Once that is established, that child, that person under 21, can self-petition for a green card through immigration. They never have to see an immigration judge. This all can happen affirmatively, but it can also happen as a defense to deportation as well.
Can you clarify for me? You said one parent. So if a child is here, let's say from India, illegally, came on somebody else's passport, across the border, and they met up with one parent who had been here already for many years, the other parent is back in India, this is still possible to do?
It is still possible. While that might change the situation and look at the circumstances for the judge that might be in family court, they have every right to grant custody to the parent, to the one parent, and still make that special finding in order for that alien to go ahead and file for a green card. Now, on top of that, it does not matter how they entered the United States. They don't have to have made a legal entry. They could have come through the border. They could have even made a false entry with someone else's passport, because as a minor under the age of 17, you cannot have the mens rea or the process that would be required to show fraud by immigration.
But I have a question. So the Indian parent in the U.S., the Indian parent is here without papers, came 20 years ago, or let's say 10 years ago, with somebody else's papers, living here and working. Now the child comes after he finishes high school. The child is here illegally. He hooks up with daddy. Mommy is back in India. So the parent who's here doesn't have any status. Is this still possible?
It is still possible, yes.
That's amazing.
That's
The
great.
family court lawyer, the family court judge usually will not request to see the status of the requesting guardian, in this case his parent, but you just want to make sure that there's no warrants out to go before you go into a court.
I raise this because we have several cases in our office where the person who became the guardian was an older sibling, a brother or a sister who had come to the U.S. before this particular person. They're over 21, but they also are not lawfully in the United States. But the family court is willing to give that older brother or sister or one parent who's undocumented, not legally, guardianship. It's sufficient then to go to immigration and self-petition for the green card. So the point of all this, children under 21 who are undocumented in the U.S. without both parents or without one parent really should come in and talk to an immigration lawyer about the possibility of doing these visas. And they have a name too. It's a complicated name. What is it?
Special immigrant juvenile.
Special immigrant juvenile visa. Yeah. So, yeah, it's really an interesting visa, and we do a lot of them in the office.
So wouldn't that affect the status of that guardian because he's already undocumented? Wouldn't the immigration will find that, oh, this person is undocumented as well, and they will go for the deportation in
No,
that case?
right now immigration could care less about that. And frankly, you actually bring up a really good point. Immigration, ICE, the enforcement branch of immigration, Department of Homeland Security, they have a system of priorities where they're deporting record numbers of people. Don't get me wrong, over 400,000 a year. That's a lot of people. But they're focusing on certain types of people who are not citizens. Criminals, sexual predators, gang members, drug traffickers, fraudsters. Way down on the bottom of their priorities are elderly, sick people and children, and right above that are family people, and above that are just hardworking people with no criminal history who just happen to be here without a green card. So that person who becomes guardian in family court, where their status really doesn't matter, is not going to be a target for immigration, at least not under any the current administration or any, I think, subsequent Democratic administration.
So what is the criteria for the guardian? Like, who can be the guardian for that juvenile?
Well, the guardian just has to be someone of age who can take them in. They need to have their own residence and be able to supply housing and support, emotional and
So they
and
don't
physical.
have to be their close relatives or relatives of the relatives.
It does not have to be related to the child, no.
Oh,
And
that's-
very often, typically, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, especially people from India and from Punjabi, often somebody comes here and they look for, somebody who might be well known in the community.
or maybe just from their village.
or somebody that they meet at temple or something like that. So we have a lot of cases where somebody comes in, they happen to have a little financial success. Everybody seems to come to them to answer their problems and questions, and they often become the guardian. And there's no relationship. They're not an uncle. They may not even know the family personally.
That's amazing. So if anybody is dealing with such case that your kid has entered here on and not in a legal way, and he's still under 21, you should definitely go and try for this visa. Go and consult a lawyer. And on that note, we will take a short break. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching Jus Punjabi. ਵੈਲਕਮ ਬੈਕ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਮੈਂ ਹਾਂ ਭੁਪਿੰਦਰ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਜਸ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ। ਤੇ ਇਸ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਥਰੂ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦਿਖਾਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੈਂਡਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਲੀਗਲ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਤੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮਸ ਨੂੰ ਹੈਂਡਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਐਂਡ ਵੀਲ ਟਾਕ ਅਬਾਊਟ ਦਿਸ ਵਿਦ ਲਾਇਰਸ ਇਨ ਦ ਹਾਊਸ, Kerry and Eileen. How are you?
Great, BK. Thanks for having us.
Oh, definitely. I think everything was well in the break. So we'll continue with the show. We talked about juvenile. Once again, what was the full name for the juvenile special immigration juvenile?
Special immigrant juvenile
Immigrant
visa.
juvenile visa.
Yeah.
So definitely, if you are a juvenile and if you're parent of a juvenile and if you are related or just know somebody who is here illegally but is still not 21, should definitely go and meet Kerry or Eileen, or just go to Bretz Coven, or just call them and you will have more knowledge about it.
Right. And don't forget, we speak Punjabi and Hindi and Bengali and
definitely,
some
and they
other
speak
languages.
Punjabi, Urdu, Hindi and Bengali as well.
Not us, but our staff.
Definitely. Definitely. And last time I remember we talked about U visa. That's your favorite,
I
as
love the
far
U,
as I
yeah.
remember. And we got lots of questions about it as well. So with a person who is qualifying for U visa, first of all, once again, what are the qualifications? And secondly, who else can be covered with him if he is a victim of a crime?
So glad you asked about the U visa, because as you know, I love the U visa. It's very unusual. A lot of people don't know about it. It is for victims of violent crimes. So a victim of a robbery, an assault, a home invasion. There's a long list. Domestic violence, even if the person wasn't, let's say, your spouse, but was just a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It requires that the person report the crime to the police. It requires that the police believe they were credible and that they cooperate with the police. So, for example, somebody who gets robbed coming off the train, gets hit over the head, someone steals the pocketbook, they go to the hospital. The next day, the detectives say, would you mind taking a look at some pictures? And they don't go, they're probably not going to qualify. So it requires all that. And the public policy behind it is to encourage people who are not documented to report crimes, right? So if you qualify for this, you will get the right to live and work in the U.S. for up to 4 years, and you will be able to apply for a green card after 3 years. You ask who it includes. If you're under 21, it includes your parents and all your brothers and sisters under 18. If you are over 21, it includes your spouse and all your kids. So this is a big package. And we did one not too long ago. I did this consultation. I couldn't think of anything to do for these folks. Finally, I asked if anyone had been a victim of a crime, and the mother said, yeah, you know, my son was beat up in high school several years ago. I said, okay, there's no problem. There's no statute of limitations. If it happened yesterday or in 1990, you still qualify. And as it turned out, the son was beat up pretty bad. He got stitches. We got the police report. We got the certification. The child, his 2 brothers, and mother and father all now have the U visa and will get the green card. The other beautiful thing about the U visa is if you came to the U.S. illegally, if you committed a fraud on immigration, if you used somebody else's name, if you had a fake marriage case, if you have a drug conviction, if you were deported and you came back illegally, with the U visa, there's a waiver for almost everything except terrorism. There is no other visa, none, in which waives the amount of things that U visa waives. So I like doing the U visa. It is amazing. There's another visa very similar, the T, for people who are victims of human trafficking. But those two visas, the U and the T, are just amazing.
So this visa is for how long?
The visa is good for up to 4 years, but you apply for a green card after 3. Okay. So basically, you get the right to, you get a work authorization, and after your 3rd year, you file for the green card.
So basically, file for a green card before your visa is expiring.
Correct.
So you're good to go.
You're good to go. And that's you and all your family.
Well, that's amazing. So
It is amazing.
so it should be a violent crime. Somebody must be injured in that crime.
Yeah, there's a long list of the crimes, a long list, things that you don't see every day, like kidnapping, forced slavery. But the typical ones we see in the office deal with an assault that's a result of a robbery. Now, you ask a very good question. The person does have to have some kind of suffer something from it. What do you do when it happened 15 years ago, when you didn't go to the hospital? Well, maybe there was emotional stress, and sometimes getting a psych report will help establish that. But for the most part, the government has been very open-minded and very liberal in granting these cases. I should tell you there's a cap of $10,000 per year, and they reach that cap every year. So some people have to wait to do it next year. But it's a beautiful visa, of which, like I said, sometimes it's a blessing in disguise, and it resolves a lot of problems.
So there are lots of people in our community who are a victim of hate crimes as well. So because of the way we are dressed up or because of the turbans, so they all qualify for this?
Well, I would say yes and no. If someone wrote graffiti, probably not. If someone maybe physically damaged the temple, probably not. But if somebody was basically assaulted, beat up because they were wearing a turban, shoved, hit over the head because they were wearing a sari, yeah, definitely that would qualify in my opinion. But being called a name is probably not going to do it.
Okay.
You'd really want to look at the police report and see what they categorize the crime as. A threat, as long as it was a bodily threat with a weapon, it most likely would be considered a felonious assault, which is what's required. So it's really important to look at the police report and see what the police have deemed it.
And by the way, that's where we start with the police report. And sometimes the police report isn't so good, but a call to the detective and explaining some other facts about the case that the detective might not have known about could get them to change the report.
The report as
Yeah.
well. Great. And also there is one thing that is very common in our community, that is adoption. So if I have a sister, oh, why not? I'll take your kids with me. Why not I adopt them? Well, everybody says it very casually, but we have heard that the laws are very complex regarding adoption. So
Right, there's 2 ways to bring a child to the United States. It's through an orphan petition and an adoption petition. Adoptions, though, require that the adopted parent have 2 years of physical custody as well as 2 years of legal custody before they can petition for them as their own child. So there are exceptions when countries are have joined in the Hague Convention, but that makes it more difficult to do an adoption case. An orphan petition is much easier. You're able to bring them to the United States without having that 2-year residency requirement, and obviously the 2-year legal custody requirement. So you really want to consult with an attorney to figure out what's going to be best. Don't rush into an adoption, because adoption may not be the best route. You may want to bring them over as you're being a guardian, as an orphan, and then do the adoption in the United States. So it's very, very tricky, and I don't suggest anybody rush into anything without speaking to a lawyer first.
definitely, we can definitely discuss about this more, but right now we are having some timings issues, so we'll talk about much more in the next show. So far, thank you so much for coming to the studio
Thank you,
and
my pleasure.
telling us so
Yeah.
much about the legal rights that we have. And Thanks to all of our viewers as well who are watching us. Keep watching Jus Punjabi. We'll be back with more shows on the legal affairs and the immigration laws. Thank you and Sat Shri Akal.